It is 8 o'clock in the morning on community radio networks on this lovely Tuesday. It is the 16th of April. Welcome to the show. And every morning we get you all this information ready for you to take on the day. Right here at Community Radio Network, crn.guru. It is lots and lots of information headed your way, and we will start with the world news coming up for you. This is Community Radio Network's The World News, read by Shabnam Madgil. Israelis awaited word on how Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would respond to Iran's first-ever direct attacks as international pressure for restraint grew amid fears of an escalation of the conflict in the Middle East. Netanyahu yesterday summoned his war cabinet for the second time in less than 24 hours to weigh a response to Iran's weekend missile and drone attack. Israel's foreign minister, Israel Katz, has said he's spearheading a political attack against Iran. This morning I sent letters to 32 countries, he said, and spoke with dozens of foreign ministers and leading figures in the world demanding that sanctions be imposed on the Iranian missile project and that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps be declared a terrorist organization. Japan's foreign minister has urged her Iranian counterpart to exercise restraint following Tehran's missile and drone attack on Israel, citing a readout of their telephone talks issued by Tokyo. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has said that Iran's unprecedented missile and drone attack on Israel 2 days ago was legitimate, and Germany has summoned Iran's ambassador following Tehran's weekend missile and drone attack against Israel. Belgium joined the other European Union countries in summoning Iran's ambassador to complain about Tehran's drone and missile attack on Israel and urge restraint. The Czech foreign minister announced that the Czech Republic has summoned the Iranian ambassador following Iran's missile and drone attack on Israel. Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry is planning a trip to Turkey this weekend for talks with his Turkish counterpart on the latest regional developments, including the status of the Gaza ceasefire talks. And the trip comes as Egypt's foreign ministry says it's working on overdrive to reduce regional tensions following Iran's weekend aerial assault on Israel. Gaza's Crossing Authority has said Israel has released around 150 detainees from the Palestinian territory, alleging that they had been mistreated in detention. The latest detainees to be released were taken to Israel and returned via the Kerem Shalom border crossing there before some were treated in a hospital in Rafah. About 90% of approximately 4,000 buildings located along Gaza's eastern border have been destroyed or damaged, and a mass grave has been discovered at the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in his first public remarks following Iran's attack on Israel, sent a veiled message to Tel Aviv to act with restraint. Blinken also called foreign ministers of Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey and Egypt to de-escalate crisis in the Middle East following Iran's strike on Israel. President Biden and senior members of his national security team seeking to contain the risk of a wider regional war following the barrage of Iranian missiles and drones directed towards Israel have told their counterparts the U.S. will not participate in any offensive action against Iran. And in a conversation with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Biden sought to frame Israel's successful interception of the Iranian onslaught as a major victory. Thousands of people held protests across the U.S. yesterday, condemning Israel's attack on Gaza, shutting down airports and disrupting traffic in major cities from New York to San Francisco. A portion of the Kennedy Expressway into Chicago O'Hare International Airport, one of the U.S.'s busiest, was blocked off by protesters calling for an end to violence. And in the San Francisco Bay Area, two major highways, the southbound 101 across the Golden Gate Bridge and the northbound 880 in nearby Oakland, were disrupted during morning rush hour yesterday as demonstrators echoed calls for a ceasefire and an end to U.S. support for Israel. And protesters also arrested on New York's Brooklyn Bridge and in Philadelphia, where several streets in the city center were blocked off. And near Seattle, a demonstration closed the main road to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators in various cities yesterday President Biden and Iraq's Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani have said they would keep working towards the withdrawal of a US-led anti-militant coalition in the country, and their meeting at the White House yesterday came amid soaring tensions in the Middle East after Iraq's neighbor Iran launched that massive retaliatory aerial attack on US ally Israel over the weekend. Iraqi Prime Minister calling for restraint in the Middle East during these talks in Washington as tensions soared between Iran and Israel. And it was 2:30 yesterday afternoon when the first 96 potential jurors filed into a drab courtroom in Lower Manhattan to encounter the world's most famous defendant, Donald Trump. Some craned their necks to catch a glimpse, an indication of the undeniable power of Trump's celebrity. But not long after, more than 50 of those same prospective jurors, drawn from one of the nation's most liberal counties, were dismissed because they said they could not be impartial about the 45th president. Donald Trump returning to a New York courtroom this morning as a judge works to find a panel of jurors who will decide whether the former president is guilty of criminal charges alleging he falsified business records to cover up a sex scandal during the 2016 campaign. The first day yesterday of Trump's history-making hush money trial ended with no one yet chosen to be on the panel of 12 jurors, and 6 alternate dozens were dismissed after saying they didn't believe they could be fair. Former President Trump can continue showing up for his criminal trial in Manhattan or potentially go straight to jail. That was Judge Juan Merchan's warning to the Republican candidate yesterday as jury selection continues. Former President Trump and his allies raged after jury selection began in his trial over that hush money payment made to an adult film star, sharing broad claims that he was being mistreated by being subject to the same rules as every standard criminal defendant before him. The judge told Trump that he expects him to be present every day of the trial, which could stretch to 8 weeks, and warned the former president that any disruptions could result in his exclusion from the court, but that any failure to show up when required could bring a warrant for his arrest. His attorneys had asked the 2 exclusions a recess on the 17th of May so the president could attend the high school graduation of his youngest son, Barron, and asked to be able to attend the U.S. Supreme Court arguments next week as the justices consider his broad claims of presidential immunity, which he hopes will result in the dismissal of some of the cases against him. The former president began his day yesterday as a criminal defendant, lashing out at the judge and prosecutors, casting himself as a victim, and angrily posting on social media. In other words, a familiar routine. It took New York Supreme Court Justice 4 hours to dispense with pretrial matters before starting jury selection in Donald Trump's Manhattan hush money trial yesterday, and the former president's historic New York criminal trial for allegedly falsifying business records to disguise that hush money payment there has now started. The former president continued to attack players in his criminal hush money case, most recently with an attack on potential key witnesses Michael Cohen, despite a gag order issued by the judge. And the former president was a pretty defeated and deflated Donald J. Trump after that first day of the hush money trial. And he appeared to fall asleep in court on the first day as he became the first U.S. president to stand criminal trial. The Supreme Court today will hear arguments in a high-stakes case that could invalidate felony obstruction charges for more than 300 individuals connected to the January 6th Capitol attack, including former President Trump. And Nikki Haley, who was a final rival to former President Trump in the Republican nomination race before ending her White House bid last month, is joining a leading conservative think tank known for focusing on international affairs and national security. The former 2-term South Carolina governor who served as ambassador to the United Nations in the Trump administration, joining the Washington, D.C.-based Hudson Institute. A trio of new investigations is underway to see who might be responsible for that deadly Baltimore bridge collapse that killed 6 people, destroyed a major thoroughfare, and crippled the local economy. The authorities confirmed the body of a 4th victim had been recovered. And while federal authorities launch a criminal investigation into the city, and attorneys for several victims also seeking accountability, especially after the ship's owner and manager filed a court document trying to limit their financial liability. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, the armorer of the film Rust, who was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter last month for the 2021 onset fatal shooting of cinematographer Helena Hutchins, was sentenced by a New Mexico judge to 18 months in prison, the maximum possible punishment. And last week they turned themselves in to face charges of a reckless high-speed race that ended in a crash involving several people. Now they are being sued. Police say Rashi Rice was driving a Lamborghini and racing a Corvette on Central Expressway in Dallas when he lost control, causing a 6-vehicle crash last month. Now both he and former SMU cornerback Teddy Knox, who was driving the Corvette, are being sued by 2 people that were involved in that pileup. And a 1-year-old child is dead after he was attacked by 3 dogs in Duncanville. The incident happened at 10:40 a.m. yesterday, and police said when first responders arrived, they began to perform life-saving measures on the child, who was unconscious, pronounced dead after being transported to the Children's Medical Center in Dallas. Students at the Wilmer Hutchins High School walked out of their classes in protest of the shooting that happened last Friday. With extra police on campus, students originally returned to school yesterday following the shooting. The 17-year-old student is in custody, accused of shooting another student in the leg, and the victim is recovering. President Biden's administration will help 50 countries identify and respond to infectious diseases with the goal of preventing pandemics like the COVID-19 outbreak that suddenly halted normal life around the globe in 2020. Donating blood gives a glimmer of hope to someone in need, and that's why Josephine Michaluk, an 81-year-old woman from Alberta, Canada, is committed to helping others in this way. In fact, she's the record holder for the most units of blood donated in a lifetime. Kindness began in 1965 at the age of 22 when she went to a blood donation appointment with her sister, has been dedicated to donating blood for as long as her body allows her to. Last year, at the age of 80, she officially earned the Guinness World Records title for the most whole blood donated by a female. She had donated 203 pints of blood at that point, and thus far she has reached a total of 209 blood donations, and she isn't done yet. Coral reefs around the world are experiencing a mass bleaching event as the climate crisis drives record-breaking ocean heat. 2 scientific bodies announcing this, with some experts warning this could become the worst bleaching period in recorded history. More than 54% of the world's coral reef areas have experienced bleaching in the past year, affecting at least 53 countries and territories, including large swaths of the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. World donors pledged more than $2.1 billion in humanitarian aid for Sudan after a year-long war that has pushed its population to the brink of famine, according to French President Emmanuel Macron, who spoke at the end of an international conference in Paris aimed at drumming up support for Sudan's 51 million people, and the aid will go to food, water, medicines, and other urgent needs. Members of Parliament rejected changes made by the House of Lords to Rishi Sunak's controversial legislation to declare Rwanda a safe destination for deported asylum seekers, punting the bill back to the UK's upper chamber. And the legislation is central to Rishi Sunak's pledge to stop the boats as he faces pressure from the right of his Conservative Party to bring down migration by asylum seekers across the English Channel from France ahead of a general election expected later this year. By declaring in law that Rwanda is a safe place to send the migrants, Rishi Sunak hopes to bypass a Supreme Court judgment last year that it is not. Poland plans to join a project to develop a European-wide air defense system to deter potential drone and missile attacks, said Prime Minister Donald Tusk as he spoke at a news conference with Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen in Warsaw. Ukrainian President Zelensky has called on Western nations to extend the same level of defense to Ukraine that was provided to Israel during a recent Iranian airstrike. In a post on Telegram, he applauded the coordinated efforts of Israel and its allies, emphasizing the success of their defensive actions. And mass evacuations are underway in cities in southern Russia and northern Kazakhstan due to floodwaters that have risen to critical levels after river embankments and a dam in the region burst last week. The rivers, including Europe's third longest river, the Ural, swelled as warm temperatures melted snow and ice, mixing with heavy rains, and the flooding is the worst to hit the area in 80 years. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz says he'll warn Chinese President Xi Jinping against providing military support for Russia. Chinese president said that China is not involved in Russia's war against Ukraine during these talks with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Rafael Nadal has confirmed he'll play this week's Barcelona Open in what will be the Spaniard's first event since January and first appearance on clay since the 2022 French Open. The torch of the Paris 2024 Olympic Games was ignited in ancient Olympia during a customary ceremony this morning, signaling the final phase of the 7-year preparations for the Games set to commence on the 26th of July. Due to overcast conditions, Greek actress Mary Mina, portraying the High Priestess, utilized a backup flame instead of a parabolic mirror to light the torch, initiating a relay that will traverse Greece and France, and the flame will be formally presented to the Paris Games organizers at the Pan-Atheniac Stadium in Athens, the venue of the inaugural modern games in 1896, following an 11-day relay across Greece. And the French torch relay will span 68 days, culminating in Paris with the lighting of the Olympic flame on the 26th of July. French President Macron said the opening ceremony for the Paris Olympics, planned on the River Seine, could be shifted instead to the country's national stadium if the security threat is deemed too high. France is on high security alert ahead of the Paris Olympics and Paralympics, which are expected to draw millions of visitors to the country. Friba Rizai, the first woman to represent Afghanistan at the Olympics, has been appalled by the treatment of women since the resurgence of the Taliban and is now campaigning for the country to be kept out of the Paris Olympics. She is a judoka who competed at the 2004 Olympics in Athens and has called on the International Olympic Committee to ban Afghanistan due to the Taliban's human rights record, arguing that under such a ban, Afghan women should still be allowed to participate as part of the refugee Olympic team. Flooding caused by heavy rains over the past 4 days has claimed the lives of at least 50 people in Afghanistan. And Australia's Prime Minister today suggested a visiting Frenchman who heroically fended off that knife-wielding Sydney Mall attacker using only a bollard could be offered citizenship. Damien Gurot has been dubbed Bollard Man and a hero of Saturday's attack that killed 6 people, including 1 Pakistani, and wounded a dozen more. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese singled him out for praise today, thanking him for his extraordinary bravery in confronting Joel Kochi on an escalator and preventing the 40-year-old attacker from reaching more victims. Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong will step down next month and his deputy Lawrence Wong will take over, the second non-member of the Lee family to lead the wealthy nation. I will relinquish my role as Prime Minister on the 15th of May, and Deputy Prime Minister Lawrence Wong will be sworn in as the next Prime Minister on the same day. He will stay on in the government as senior minister after he steps down next month. The 72-year-old announced he will end his 20-year rule and hand over to his deputy. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Community Radio Networks, and South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol pledged to listen to people's voices more closely and improve the lives of the needy in his first public comment since his Conservative Party suffered a stinging defeat in parliamentary elections last week. In what it describes as a significant advancement, the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, today said it has successfully developed a lightweight carbon nozzle for rocket engines, making a breakthrough in rocket engine technology. This innovation, accomplished by the Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, promises to enhance the vital parameters of rocket engines, including thrust levels, specific impulse, and thrust-to-weight ratios, thereby boosting the payload capacity to launch vehicles. Ram Navami, celebrated after the end of Navaratri, is one of the holiest festivals for Hindus all over the world, and it is believed that Lord Ram, the 7th avatar of Lord Vishnu and the slayer of the demon king Ravan, was born on this day in Ayodhya. And it is being observed in all of India with great devotion today. Elaborate rituals and the perfect traditional touches to it. The Surya Tilak ritual at the Ram temple in Ayodhya safeguards the Ram Lala idol from excess heat using precise sunlight concentration, and this ritual occurs during the birth celebrations Muhurat tomorrow. The shooters, who were on the run after firing outside Salman Khan's residence in Mumbai, are now in custody of the Mumbai crime branch. Vicky Sahab Gupta and Sagar Shri Jogendrapal were arrested in Gujarat's Bhuj yesterday. Visuals of the duo with their faces covered with black plastic bags being escorted out of the Mumbai airport by armed officers are now all over the internet, and both accused are reportedly residents of Bihar and were arrested by the police from a temple in Bhuj. Both were produced before a Mumbai court this morning, after which the accused was sent to police custody until the 25th of this month. The Kannada entertainment industry is in mourning following the sudden demise of the legendary actor, director and producer Dwarakesh. He breathed his last at the age of 81. I beg your pardon. He was 81 years old, leaving behind a legacy that has significantly contributed to the industry's growth and development. Rajasthan Royal star-studded batting will face the serious challenge of decoding Sunil Narene's mystery at the Eden Gardens when they take on two-time champions, the Kolkata Knight Riders, on a top-of-the-table IPL clash today. Senior Congress leader Rahul Gandhi today lashed out at Prime Minister Modi, calling him an instrument of a few rich businessmen in the country, alleging that Modi's job was to distract people from the real issues of the country, protect the richest businessmen in India and forgive their bank loans. He is the instrument of 5 or 6 of the biggest, richest businessmen in India. He claimed that Modi has given around 16 lakh crore rupees to 20 to 25 people in the country. And even before the Lok Sabha poll fervor started peaking, the BJP built up a groundswell, ratcheting up Brand Modi, an exercise that helped the party reach out to around 20% of UP's population within 3.5 months. And this was Viksit Bharat Abhiyan, which aimed for a ground-level implementation of welfare schemes initiated by the BJP government. During his election speeches, especially in states outside Uttar Pradesh, Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath is making sure that his own brand of administration, especially with regard to law and order, is prominently on display. Rally after rally across Rajasthan, Maharashtra and Kashmir, the Chief Minister has elaborated on how no riot has taken place in UP during his 7 years tenure, stating graphically how criminals fear being hung upside down if they do anything wrong. The Aam Aadmi Party today released a list of star campaigners for the upcoming Lok Sabha polls for the state of Gujarat, which include Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal and his wife Sunita. The list also includes Punjab Chief Minister Bhagwant Mann, Manish Sisodia, Satyendra Jain and Raghav Chadha, along with others. The BJP today came out with its second list of 3 candidates in Punjab for the Lok Sabha elections, replacing Union Minister Som Prakash with his wife from Hoshiarpur Lok Sabha seat, and the party fielded Anita Som Prakash from the Hoshiarpur Reserve Parliamentary constituency. The city traffic police have chalked out a plan with deployment of 367 personnel for the convenience of citizens and cricket fans during the T20 matches between Pakistan and New Zealand at the Rawalpindi Cricket Stadium from the 16th of this month, that is today, till the 21st. The Faizabad Dharna Commission, formed to investigate the Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan's 2017 sit-in, has sent its report to the federal government, recommending, among other things, legislation and drafting of rules and SOPs to regulate the working of intelligence agencies. And the Islamabad High Court today disposed of a petition filed by ex-Premier Imran Khan's wife Bushra Bibi, seeking her transfer from her Banigala residence, which had been declared a sub-jail, to the Adiala jail. Following the Tosha Khana verdict, Bushra Bibi had arrived at the Adiala jail, where the National Accountability Bureau's team was already present to surrender to authorities, and subsequently she was taken into custody by the anti-graft watchdog. However, she was moved to her Banigala home after it was declared a sub-jail in a late-night notification, and her shifting to the residence has been under discussion for weeks, as she and her husband denied submitting any application to declare the residence a sub-jail. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news for you. I do have financial news coming up in a separate segment. Stay with us right here. And for those of you that would like to reach me directly, my number is 214-675-1754. All right, let's get you the financial news for today. And today is the 16th of April. Wishing you all a lovely Tuesday. With the financial news, we normally always start with the foreign currency exchange rates. The dollar is headed for its biggest rally in over a year on expectation that the U.S. interest rates will stay high for longer, and as investors pile into the haven currency amid escalating tensions in the Middle East. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index climbed for a fifth day today, taking gains to around 2%, the biggest advance since February of last year. We have the Indian rupee at 83.64. Now, we have news here that India and Thailand may be exploring a currency deal to promote the use of the rupee in the Southeast Asian country. Promoting the local currency through bilateral swap deals with different countries was a strategy that was employed by China to make the yuan more widely acceptable. And soon you may be able to tip in rupees in Thailand. And as the Reserve Bank of India and the Government of India look to popularize use of the Indian currency. Pakistani rupee is at 278.11, Bangladeshi taka at 109.69, Sri Lankan rupee at 300.05, Nepalese rupee 133.88, the British pound at 0.80, the euro at 0.94, the Canadian dollar 1.38, the Australian dollar 1.56, Mexican peso 16.93, Chinese yuan at 7.24. Tensions between the Philippines and China over competing maritime claims have added to pressure on the peso that has slumped to a 7-month low, and an escalation would be a big concern for investors, according to Philippines central bank chief. We have the Japanese yen at 154.72, and it's Japan's finance minister stopped short of issuing his strongest warning on possible market intervention in comments that fueled renewed yen weakness after the currency slumped to a fresh 34-year low overnight. The Russian ruble at 93.75, the Thai baht at 36.65, and the Turkish lira at 32.49. Gold has risen as demand for the haven asset grew amid fears of escalating tensions in the Middle East following Iran's unprecedented attack on Israel over the weekend. The bullion rose as much as 1.7% yesterday as the conflict in the Middle East entered a dangerous new phase, edging close to last week's new record high, and the precious metal broke through the 2,400 an ounce on Friday but closed the session lower as technical indicators indicated its rally had run too hot and investors liquidated positions. Canadian miner Barrick Gold said today that its gold and copper production has fallen sequentially in the first quarter, hurt by lower grades and maintenance at its mines. New FTC data show consumers reported losing $10 billion to scams last year, marking the first time that fraud losses have reached that benchmark. The FTC fielded fraud reports from 2.6 million consumers, with imposter scams ranking as the most frequently reported, and these scams involve individuals posing as various entities such as your bank's fraud department, government agencies, distressed relatives, reputable businesses, or tech support professionals. President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden earned almost $620,000 last year, according to their joint tax return released by the White House. The deadline date for Americans to file their taxes was yesterday. And the White House also released the return for Vice President Kamala Harris and Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff, showing that pair made just a little over $450,000 last year. Donald Trump's social media startup has tumbled, extending a 2-week slump after the company took a first step towards allowing the former president and other insiders to capitalize on their stakes. Trump Media and Technology Group Corporation, parent of Truth Social, filed to register shares, including those linked to warrants, and the move could ultimately bring forward sales from insiders that are currently not permitted until September. The stock has slumped 18% to 26.61, cutting its year-to-date gain to 52% after touching the lowest level since before Trump's rival Ron DeSantis quit the primary race in January. His exit had sparked an 88% spike to extend a rally that began after Trump's victory in the Iowa caucuses. Donald Trump's tax plans have already proven a hit with billionaires. What Joe Biden is hoping is that those same plans will be politically toxic in the swing states that will decide the election this fall. And that calculation is said to be a central theme of his speech, said to be given in the key swing state of Pennsylvania later today. United Health Group expects to take a hit of as much as $1.6 billion this year from disruptions caused by the February cyber attack at its Change Healthcare unit. And despite its disruptions, United Health still beat estimates for first quarter adjusted profits, sending its shares up 6.4% in pre-market trading this morning. It has already booked $872 million in costs related to the data breach in the quarter, most of it as one-time items. Bank of America said this morning that first quarter profits have dropped 18% from a year ago as a key revenue source weakened, offering the latest example of how even the biggest banks are increasingly challenged by high interest rates. And net interest income at the Bank of America fell 3% from the year earlier period as higher deposit costs more than offset the higher asset yields and modest loan growth. Bank of New York Mellon beat Wall Street expectations today with a 5% increase in profits as rising asset values boosted investment services fees, more than offsetting lower interest income for the world's largest custodian bank. The oldest U.S. bank saw its assets under custody increase as hopes of a soft landing for the economy led to a market rally. PNC Financial Services reported a 21% fall in first quarter profit today, hurt by lower interest income as the lender paid more to hold customer deposits in a high interest rate environment. Johnson & Johnson reported quarterly revenue below analyst estimates as sales from its blockbuster psoriasis drug Stelara, which is expected to face competition from biosimilar versions in some markets later this year, fell short of expectations, and the company's shares fell nearly 2% in pre-market trading this morning. Stelara sales were flat at $2.45 billion in the first quarter and came in below expectations of $2.6 billion. The owners of O.J. Simpson's infamous white Ford Bronco, which was the center of a low-speed chase across Los Angeles, are finally ready to sell the car, with the hopes of getting at least $1.5 million. His former agent, Michael Gilbert, and two friends of Simpson's longtime friend, Al Cowlings, who was behind the wheel that 17th of June in 1994, all share ownership of the vehicle and shared how they planned to now sell it. Before he passed, they had always thought this was going to be the year they were going to sell because it's the 30th anniversary. Who knows if we are all going to be around for the 35th or the 40th. Since that 2016, the white Ford Bronco has been on loan to the Alcatraz East Crime Museum in Tennessee. However, the group is now looking to take back the vehicle in hopes of getting at least $1.5 million in a public or private sale. Robert McNeil, who created the even-handed no-frills PBS newscast The McNeil-Lehrer News Hour in the 70s and co-anchored the show with his late partner Jim Lehrer for 2 decades, has died. He was 93 years old. Died of natural causes at the New York Presbyterian Hospital, according to his daughter. And the broadcast became the McNeil-Lehrer Report, and then in 1983 was expanded to an hour and renamed the McNeil-Lehrer News Hour, the nation's first 1-hour evening news broadcast and the recipient of several Emmy and Peabody Awards. It remains on the air today with Jeff Bennett and Amna Nawaz as anchors. In a warning to American Airlines pilots, their union, the Allied Pilots Association, says it's seen a significant spike in safety and maintenance-related problems in their operation, and the union claims that among the problematic trends it's been tracking are tools left in wheel wells, an increasing number of collisions between aircrafts while they are being towed, and an increasing number of items left in the safety area near jet bridges, and pressure to return aircrafts to line service to maintain on-time performance due to a lack of spares. ERCOT is expecting an increase in demand for electricity this week as temperatures across Texas rise into the upper 80s. And the group that manages the Texas electric grid, ERCOT, is asking power plants to postpone any planned shutdowns for maintenance that was scheduled this week. And operators are hoping the move will help reinforce the grid and avoid a power emergency. Thanks to a huge boost in international travel, DFW Airport drops to the 3rd busiest in the world. Atlanta is still the busiest airport in the world, and it is now followed by Dubai International Airport and then DFW. That's the new rankings according to the Airports Council International's list. Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport saw more than 104 million passengers last year, and more than 86 million passengers traveled through Dubai. DFW reported nearly 82 million passengers, an increase of nearly 9%. A huge resurgence in international travel shook up this year's rankings as DFW hopes to welcome 100 million passengers by the end of the decade. And DFW Airport celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. And airport leaders say if the airport continues to grow the way it has for the past 5 decades, that milestone could be reached sooner. Today it's just a field, but in 18 months it'll be one-of-a-kind place to play in Texas. The Dallas Stars broke ground on the new Star Center multi-sport North Lake, the facility located on the eastbound side of 114 at Chadwick Parkway, just a few blocks east of I-35W. Dallas Stars president and CEO Brad Alberts doesn't just envision a rink of ice, but a community where diverse sports converge under one massive roof. And this new sports complex will house dual ice rinks like other Star Centers in the region. But this North Lake facility will also house multiple volleyball and basketball courts, plus outdoor pickleball courts. That coffee you're slurping this morning, it's 600,000 years old. Using genes from coffee plants around the world, researchers built a family tree for the world's most popular type of coffee, known to scientists as Coffea arabica and to coffee lovers simply as Arabica. The researchers, hoping to learn more about the plants to better protect them from pests and climate change, found that the species emerged around 600,000 years ago through natural crossbreeding of two other coffee species. And these wild coffee plants originated in Ethiopia, but are thought to have been first roasted and brewed primarily in Yemen, starting in the 1400s. In the 1600s, an Indian monk called Baba Budan is fabled to have smuggled 7 raw coffee beans back to his homeland from Yemen, laying the foundation for coffee's global takeover. Arabica coffee, prized for its smooth and relatively sweet flavor, now makes up 60 to 70% of the global coffee market and brewed by brands such as Starbucks, Tim Hortons, and Dunkin'. The rest is Robusta, a stronger and more bitter coffee made from one of Arabica's parents, Coffea canephora. The spring meetings of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank are due to open today with 2 clear objectives: help countries combat climate change and assist the most indebted nations. The meetings, which will bring central bankers, finance and development ministers, academics and representatives from the private sector and civil society together to discuss the state of the global economy, will kick off with the IMF's publication of its updated World Economic Outlook in Washington today. Shipping giant CMA CGM's air cargo branch will take delivery of 2 Boeing 777 freighters later this year as it opens a new trans-Pacific route and has ordered a 5th one for next year. The French group has been pushing to expand its reach and logistics beyond maritime freight, supported by huge shipping profits in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. And European Union is set to fine Oreo maker Mondelez International for blocking cross-border sales. The fine could be worth millions of euros, and it will come as early as next month. Roberto Cavalli, the founder of the eponymous Italian fashion house, and his bold and intricate designs were worn by Taylor Swift, Madonna, Beyonce, and other A-listers, has died. He was 83 years old, and his company, which he founded in 1970, has announced this on Instagram. It is with great sadness that today we say our final goodbyes to our founder, Roberto Cavalli. From humble beginnings in Florence, he succeeded in becoming a globally recognized name, loved and respected by all. Apple CEO Tim Cook said this morning that he wants to further increase investment in Vietnam a day after the company announced it would spend on suppliers in the Southeast Asian manufacturing hub. Vietnam has become very important to Apple as the company seeks to diversify its supply chains away from China, where most of its smartphones and tablets are assembled. He made his comments while meeting with Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh, and he says there is no place like Vietnam, a vibrant and beautiful country. And that is Tim Cook speaking this morning in Hanoi. Travelers hoping to avoid airport delays are best to book with Qatar Airways or fly in Latin America. That's because Qatar Airways was the world's most on-time carrier last month. An aviation industry analytics business has published, which shows Latin America as the region with the most timely arrivals and departures. And Turkish carrier Pegasus Airlines was listed 2nd overall, but the rest of the top 5 was made up of Colombia's Avianca, Aeromexico, and Chile's LATAM Airlines, with the Lima's Jorge Chavez International Airport the most on-time departure point. And although 90% of Lima's approximately 14,000 flights for the month lifted off within 15 minutes of schedule, and Santiago proved March's 3rd best airport worldwide. Although 6th overall, Delta Airways perhaps had the most impressive airline performance, considering it operated almost 145,000 flights during the month, of which almost 86% were deemed to be on time. The mayor of Colombia's capital announced new measures to reduce water consumption in the city of 8 million people, where a drought associated with the El Nino weather pattern has already prompted officials to ration water in most neighborhoods and ask residents to change their showering habits. In this news out of Bogota. A heat wave in the Philippines is forcing power plants to shut down today, placing the country at risk of blackouts and prompting the government to call on people to reduce consumption. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz called for fair competition in trade relations with China, while warning about dumping and overproduction as he spoke to students in Shanghai. He is visiting China against the background of looming European Union tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles and other trade-related tensions, and the two countries also split over how to handle Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Do you know that Singapore earned $291 billion through services exports in 2022? The UAE and Turkey followed with their earnings of $155 billion and $90 billion respectively, according to a World Bank report. A lot can be learned from China and India, the two Asian giants. Combined, the five countries boast an 18% share in global service exports. Tesla's recent global job cuts will affect staff in China, according to the automaker's second largest market after the United States, and the layoffs are impacting various teams, including the sales department. CEO Elon Musk announced that the company is laying off more than 10% of its workforce worldwide due to declining sales and increasing competition in the EV market. India's ability to turn its economic expansion into corporate profits makes it a better prospect for investors than Japan or China, and the powerful rallies in Indian and Japanese equities as China's market has slumped have reset Asia's financial market landscape, providing global investors with three competing poles for regional allocations. India today has imposed fresh restrictions on the export of prohibited or restricted essential commodities to the Maldives. It is these commodities will only be permitted for export through four designated customs stations: the Mundra Seaport, Tuticorin Seaport, Nhava Sheva Seaport, and the ICD Tughlakabad. Apple is reportedly in advanced discussions with the Murugappa Group and Tata Group's Titan company to assemble and possibly manufacture sub-components for iPhone camera modules. And this move signifies Apple's intent to deepen its supplier base in India as it gradually shifts operations away from China. The statistics are no longer a surprise. The trend continues. More than 1 million Indians continue to wait in employment-based green card backlogs. Over 1.2 million Indians, including their dependents, waiting in the first, second, and third employment-based green card categories. And the data reflects approval of the I-140 immigrant petitions, which is the first step in the entire green card process. Ram Navami today is tomorrow is going to have the banks closed for a holiday in several states. Closing tomorrow, many banks. Srinivas Pallia, a long-time employee of Wipro, sold all his shares in the company worth 5 crore rupees a month and a half before being appointed as the new CEO of the IT giant. The transaction, which took place on the 14th of February, was reported to the exchange the following day. He disposed of his 100,000 Wipro shares through market sale. Yoga Guru Baba Ramdev today once again issued an apology to the Supreme Court in connection with the Patanjali misleading advertisement case, assuring the court that such incidents will not occur in the future. Vande Bharat Express trains, known as India's first semi-high-speed rail service, has successfully transported over 2 crore passengers until the end of March 31st this year. Vande Bharat Express, first launched by the Indian Railways between Delhi and Varanasi in 2019. And Indian Railways this month marks its 171st anniversary, commemorating the historic first train ride in 1853 from Mumbai to Thane. The Supreme Court today expressed satisfaction on steps taken by the Centre for the installation of the Kavach anti-collision system in trains and disposed of a PIL seeking a direction to implement the indigenously developed train protection system. For a mere 150 rupees as the base airfare, you can embark on a 50-minute flight from Lilabari to Tezpur, and this route is not an exception. Numerous other flights offer base ticket prices below 1,000 rupees, and these flights operate under the Regional Air Connectivity Scheme of the government, which offers various incentives to airline operators. Connecting Lilapari and Tezpur in Assam is just one example. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister today led a high-level delegation on a two-day visit to Pakistan, which is seeking help in overcoming one of the worst economic crises. Prince Faisal bin Farhan's visit comes a week after Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif met the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, one of Pakistan's closest allies and a leading supplier of oil to Islamabad. Prince Faisal is expected to meet with Shehbaz Sharif and President Asif Ali Zardari. Prince Mohammed told Sharif that Saudi Arabia would invest $5 billion in Pakistan. Last year, Saudi Arabia deposited $2 billion into Pakistan's central bank to boost its foreign exchange reserves. Pakistan's Prime Minister calling for closer cooperation between Saudi Arabia and his cash-strapped nation to enhance Saudi investment in his country. And the finance minister in Islamabad has said that Pakistan doesn't need too many policy prescriptions, it just needs to implement those policies. He is actually in Washington, D.C., and he was speaking at the Atlantic Council think tank on his first working day in Washington and urged institutions such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund to help countries like Pakistan deal with the effects of climate change and achieve financial inclusivity. He is in the U.S. to attend the spring meetings of the World Bank Group and discuss a new loan package with the IMF. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif today said both Islamabad and Riyadh needed to work closely to expedite the first phase of Saudi investments in Pakistan under that new arrangement. Used car dealers have urged the government to allow the commercial imports of cars up to 10 years old and SUVs up to 20 years, saying this would help the government earn handsome revenues and enable consumers to buy vehicles at affordable prices. After a long Eid break, the stock market extended its record-breaking spree to a fifth session on the prevailing bullish sentiment stemming from Saudi investment prospects, propelling the benchmark KSE 100 index to close at a new all-time high, above 70,500 yesterday. And Prime Minister Sharif directed authorities concerned for robust renewable energy management to cut the country's $27 billion oil import bill and improve the country's existing electricity distribution system. That's all I have in the financial news for you, but I do have the final segment of your program coming up for you in just a minute. Meanwhile, for those that would like to reach me, my direct number is 214-675-1754. Our final segment of the program on this lovely Tuesday morning. It is the 16th of April, and today the Chaitra Navratri ends, and there will be Ramnami celebrations at all the temples around town today. Wishing you all a happy Ramnami. I would like to take a moment here to thank all the supporters of community radio networks. I have huge thanks going out to Discount Power, to Houston EB5, to the Ahluwalia Law Offices, the Wyndham Hotel in Irving, Digital X-Force, Kinza Law, My Kalachi, Ruchi Palace by My Kalachi, Sri Vimal, Vimal's Venue, Eggaholic in Irving, Mystic Mandala, and Flash Brush Productions. The Shruti Sangeet Academy, it's an Indian classical vocal lessons school. Certified classical vocalist and talk show host Shanta Mishra is the teacher, and she explores the soul of Indian music and offers comprehensive curriculum with personalized instruction, immersion in bhajans, shlokas, and folk music. There can be private and group lessons on weekends in East Plano. You can learn classical ragas, master vocal techniques, embrace rhythm and tal, and experience Indian culture like never before. You can reach out to Shanta Mishra at 612-562-4432. shantamishra10@gmail.com is her website. An organization called Color Me Safe Foundation is a family crisis management organization serving the greater Dallas area, and they've launched 2 new educational initiatives. One is called Ask Auntie, and the other is Sati Support Group. Through discussion on topics such as generational and cultural gaps, cultural identity, mental health, bullying, and many more, these programs seek to empower South Asian children and families with the tools and understanding to overcome these shared challenges in a very supportive and non-judgmental space. You can reach colormesafefoundation.org. April is Celebrate Diversity Month. You can join the Dallas Symphony Orchestra for a special pre-concert event celebrating the importance of diversity, inclusion, equity, and unity. The U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce is pleased to partner with the Dallas Symphony Orchestra to promote Celebrate Diversity Night this Friday from 6 to 7 at the Meyerson Symphony Center. And this pre-concert event features performances, light snacks, and drinks. The pre-concert event is free, but you must RSVP to attend. Following the Celebrate Diversity Night, the Dallas Symphony Orchestra will feature a concert performance by Troupe Vertigo, fusing together elements of cirque acrobatics, classical dance, contemporary theater, and orchestral music. Troupe Vertigo brings audiences on a spellbinding journey through the world of artistic movement at the Meyerson Symphony this Friday. The Hyderabad Society of North Texas is having their Eid picnic this Saturday from noon till 6 at the Travick Pavilion in Grapevine. And for more information, you can call Muhammad Hamid at 469-544-4118 for that event. And now just a few days left for Pratham Dallas-Fort Worth Gala, and we're excited to announce that we still have some limited individual tickets that are available. It is this Saturday, the 20th, at the Omni Frisco Hotel, an evening that ignites minds, touches hearts, and empowers futures. And during that evening, you'll be mesmerized by Vidya Vox's captivating voice and vibrant electronic soundscapes as she presents a special musical performance that blends tradition and innovation. And our keynote speaker for the Pratham Gala this year is Krish Thanam, a captivating speaker mentored by the legendary Zig Ziglar. And Krish's message of hope and humor will ignite your passion for change, leaving you motivated, empowered, and ready to make a lasting impact. You guests are encouraged to incorporate a splash of Pratham yellow into their attire. And we will be also hosting a best dressed contest during the reception, as well as a social media likes contest. And over the course of the evening, you'll also indulge in a decadent meal crafted by our finest chefs and let the conversations flow with like-minded individuals passionate about creating change. Ladies and gentlemen, your presence at the Pratham Dallas-Fort Worth Gala symbolizes a child supported with the opportunities needed to realize their dreams, to secure job prospects, and embrace a brighter future illuminated by the power of learning. So please join us this Saturday at the Omni Frisco Hotel for the Pratham Gala. India Association of North Texas is excited to share they are hosting a fun meet for the community seniors this Sunday at the Russell Creek Park from 10 to 1. and they will all be there with yoga, bingo, karaoke, live entertainment, and plenty more from 10 to 1 this Sunday at the Russell Creek Park on McDermott Road in Plano. Please mark some more dates. This Sunday also at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the Miss South Asia World 2024 with celebrity guest Pooja Batra, the Bollywood actress, and that's going to be at the Grand Center in Plano. And on Sunday evening, it is Bismil Ki Mehfil at the Sambuca 360 on Bishop Road at the Shops at Legacy in Plano. World Meditation Hour is happening this Sunday from 6:30 to 7:30, where we focus on sending thoughts of peace and healing for the whole world. Every individual can contribute to healing the world with thoughts of peace and love. This is happening from 6:30 to 7:30 this Sunday by the Brahma Kumaris, and you can get more Zoom details and register at bkrymeditation.us. It is EarthX 2024 Congress of Conferences happening from the 22nd to the 26th of this month at the Hilton Anatole, and you can register at earthx.org. Jeet Ka Safar with the Amax champions of the 2009 T20 World Cup cricket team is going to be held on the 26th of this month. And on the 26th and 27th, there'll be 3 shows of Neetu Chandra as Umrao Jan Ada. This is a Western musical play in the Broadway style based on the novel written by Mirza Hadi Ruswa. Tickets are available at Ticketmaster, and there'll be 3 shows on the 26th and 27th at the Dallas Music Hall at Fair Park. The Festival of Joy is being held at the Clyde Warren Park on Saturday, the 27th of April, and it'll be in downtown Dallas. You can check out details at festivalofjoydallas.com. And the Festival of India, Dallas Indian Lions Club, cordially invites you to our 39th annual celebration, Sunday, the 28th of April in Plano. We also do have the Indian Idol Intense Tour on the 10th of May at the Grand Center in Plano, and Unforgettable 90s, Kumar, Shanu and Sadhana Sargam on the 12th of May, and this one is going to be in Allen at the Credit Union of Texas Theater. Junoon's show on the 19th of May at the Raleigh Underground. And we also have a holistic festival. This is a 2-day festival, 8th and 9th of June at the Plano Nature and Retreat Center, being brought to you by Mystic Mandala. Please call Vijay if you need booths and any other information on holisticfestivaloflife.com. Vijay's number is 972-750-1419. The Pagal Tour by Badshah is happening at the Curtis Culwell Center, and that's on the 14th of June. And Shreya Ghoshal will also be at the Curtis Culwell Center on Sunday, the 16th of June. Nan's Vision is presenting the Glamorous Night with Shilpa Shetty on the 29th of June at the Grandian Event Center in Frisco. So please mark all these dates, and we'll have more details coming up as we get closer to them. Today is a day where we've had few scattered showers this morning, and these are slowly cruising across the area as this weak Pacific front is moving through the area till about noon today, and the air will dry out significantly behind the front. But ahead of the front, very warm and humid this morning with temperatures near 70 degrees. The decreasing clouds breezy and warm today with highs in the upper 80s a little bit later, and the clouds will roll back in tonight with tomorrow morning lows in the 60s, partially cloudy tomorrow with highs in the upper 80s, and the average high this time of the year is supposed to be the mid 70s. Let's get you some stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date, the 16th of April. Way back in 1889, future Hollywood legend Charlie Chaplin is born. Charles Spencer Chaplin in London, England. One of the most financially successful stars of early Hollywood was introduced to the stage when he was 5 years old and the son of a London music hall entertainers. He was watching a show starring his mother when her voice cracked, and he was quickly shuffled onto the stage to finish the act. His father died when he was young, and when his mother had a nervous breakdown, he and his older brother, Sidney, roamed London, where they danced on the streets and collected pennies in a hat. They eventually went to an orphanage and Charlie Chaplin joined the 8 Lancashire Lads, a children's dance group. When he was 17, he developed his comedic skills with the help of Fred Carno's company, for which his half-brother had already become a popular comedian, and soon his bowler's hat, outturned feet, mustache, and walking cane became his trademark, and he joined the Keystone Company and filmed Making a Living, in which he played a mustachioed villain who wore a monocle. It wasn't long before he also worked on the other side of the camera, helping direct his 12th film and directing his 13th, Caught in the Rain, all on his own. He was born on today's date in the year 1889. And we do have 16th of April in 1917 that Vladimir Lenin, leader of the Revolutionary Bolshevik Party, returns to Petrograd after a decade of exile to take the reins of the Russian Revolution. That is Lenin returning to Russia from exile after 10 years on today's date in 1970. Became the virtual dictator of the world's first Marxist state, and his government made peace with Germany, nationalized industry and distribution land. But beginning in 1918, he had to fight a devastating civil war against the Tsarist forces. In 1920, the Tsarists were defeated, and in 1922, the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, was established. Upon his death in 1924, his body was embalmed and placed in a mausoleum near the Moscow Kremlin. Petrograd was renamed Leningrad in his honor, and after a struggle of succession, fellow revolutionary Joseph Stalin succeeded Lenin as leader of the Soviet Union. On the 16th of April in 1929, the Cleveland Indians opened the season with numbers on the back of each player's jersey. This was the first Major League Baseball team to do so. The numbers make it easier for scorekeepers, broadcasters, and fans to identify players. Cleveland wins the game against the Detroit Tigers in 11 innings, 5-4. And this was the first time that Cleveland became the first MLB team to play with numbers on their backs of the jerseys. In Basel, Switzerland, Albert Hoffmann, a Swiss chemist working at the Sandoz Pharmaceutical Research Laboratory, accidentally consumes LSD-25, a synthetic drug he had created in 1938 as part of his research into the medicinal value of lysergic acid compounds. After taking the drug, formerly known as lysergic acid diethylamide, Dr. Hoffmann was disturbed by unusual sensations and hallucinations. In his notes, he related the experience. Last Friday, I was forced to interrupt my work in the lab in the middle of the afternoon and proceed home, being affected by a remarkable restlessness combined with a slight dizziness. At home, I lay down and sank into a not unpleasant, intoxicated-like condition characterized by an extremely stimulated imagination. In a dreamlike state, with eyes closed, I found the daylight to be unpleasingly glaring. I perceived an uninterrupted stream of fantastic pictures, extraordinary shapes with intense kaleidoscopic play of colors, and after some 2 hours this condition faded away. After intentionally taking the drug again to confirm that it had caused this strange physical and mental state, he published a report announcing his discovery, and so LSD made its entry into the world as a hallucinogenic drug. Widespread use of the so-called mind-expanding drug did not begin until the 60s, when counterculture figures expounded on the benefits of using LSD as a recreational drug. The manufacture, sale, possession, and use of LSD, known to cause negative reactions in some of those who take it, were made illegal in the United States in 1965. But those hallucinogenic effects of LSD were discovered on today's date in 1943. And on the 16th of April in 1945, Adolf Hitler proclaims from his underground bunker that deliverance was at hand from encroaching Russian troops and that his beloved capital city of Berlin would remain German. A mighty artillery is meeting the enemy, proclaims Der Führer. This time the Bolsheviks will experience Asia's old fate. That is, he must and will bleed to death in front of the capital of the German Reich. It was in his April 16th order that he tried to shame his troops into holding the line against the Allies. Whoever does not do his duty at this moment is a traitor to our nation, and the regiment or division that leaves its position acts so disgracefully that it will have to be ashamed before the women and children who are withstanding the bombing terror in our towns. 2 weeks later, he would commit suicide in his bunker rather than face responsibility for his monstrous war crimes. And on the 7th of May, Germany officially surrendered unconditionally. But it was Hitler who called for that last stand on the Eastern Front on today's date in 1945. And a year later, in 1946, Arthur Chevrolet, an auto racer and the brother of Chevrolet auto namesake Louis Chevrolet, dies by suicide in Louisiana. It was throughout this time that Louis Chevrolet's brothers continued racing and building cars. Arthur Chevrolet drove in the inaugural Indianapolis 500 held in 1911, although mechanical problems forced him out of the race and he failed to finish, and made another attempt in the Indy 500 in 1916, but once again dropped out due to mechanical issues. The auto racer, it was Arthur Chevrolet, and by the 1930s both were broke and their racing careers were over. Louis returned to Detroit to work in GM's Chevrolet division, and his brother Arthur died by suicide in 1946. Arthur Chevrolet, 1946, on today's date, committed suicide. A giant explosion occurs during the loading of fertilizer onto the freighter Grand Camp at a pier in Texas City, Texas on 16th of April in 1947. Nearly 600 people lost their lives and thousands were injured when the ship was literally blown to bits. Ammunition nitrate was used as an explosive by the U.S. Army in World War II, and after the war ended, production of the chemical continued, as its use as a fertilizer became accepted. However, the precautions used in its transport became far more lax in the post-war years, and on today's date the Grand Camp was being loaded with ammonium nitrate as well as tobacco and government-owned ammunition. Cigarette smoking, although officially banned, was a common practice by longshoremen on the docks, and just 2 days prior to the explosion a cigarette had caused a fire on the docks. On this morning of the 16th of April, smoke was spotted deep within one of the Grand Camp's holds. Water and an extinguisher were used to fight the fire, but hoses were not employed for fear of ruining the cargo, and there were already 2,300 tons loaded on that ship, and while the ammunition was removed, the crew attempted to restrict oxygen to the hold in hopes of putting out the fire. Apparently they did not realize that because of ammonium nitrate's chemical composition, it does not require oxygen in order to burn. And by 9 o'clock that morning, flames had erupted from the hold, and within minutes it exploded. Nearly 600 people died and 3,500 were injured, and the explosion caused $100 million in damages, and a long disputed court case over the cause of the blast was resolved when Congress granted compensation to 1,394 victims. They received a total of only $17 million in 1955, and the port was rebuilt to handle oil products only. That was the pier in Texas City, Texas, where this fertilizer explosion kills so many people on today's date in 1947. Multi-millionaire and financier Bernard Baruch, in a speech given during the unveiling of his portrait in South Carolina House of Representatives, coins the term Cold War to describe relations between the United States and the Soviet Union, and the phrase struck, and for over 40 years it was a mainstay in the language of American diplomacy. He had served as an advisor to presidents on economic and foreign policy issues since the days of Woodrow Wilson. In 1919, he was one of the U.S. advisors at the Paris Peace Conference that ended World War I, and during the 30s he frequently advised FDR and members of Congress on international finance and issues of neutrality. After World War II, he remained a trusted advisor to the new administration of Harry Truman. His speech on today's date was given in a completely different context, however. A portrait of the native South Carolinian was being hung in the state's House of Representatives, and he was invited for its unveiling. Most guests expected he would give a brief talk, but he instead launched into a scorching attack on the industrial labor problems in the country. It was only through unity between labor and management, he declared, that the U.S. could hope to play its role as the major force by which the world can renew itself physically or spiritually. Called for longer work weeks, no strike pledges from unions, and no layoff pledges from management. It was imperative that American business and industry pull itself together, he warned. And the term Cold War was instantly embraced by American newspapers and magazines as an apt description of the situation between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. A war without fighting or bloodshed, but a battle nonetheless. It was the Cold War that was proclaimed on today's date in 1947. 1947. And in 1963, on today's date, days after being jailed in Birmingham, Alabama for a series of anti-segregation protests, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. pens a response to his critics on some scraps of paper. And this open letter, now known as his Letter from a Birmingham Jail, offered a forceful defense of the protest campaign. It is now regarded as one of the greatest texts of the American civil rights movement. The Birmingham campaign succeeded in drawing national attention to the horrors of segregation. And after the United Auto Workers paid his bail when he was jailed, he was released from jail. 4 months later, he stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and gave his "I Have a Dream" speech at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, regarded by many as the pinnacle of his movement. But it was this letter that he wrote, the Letter from a Birmingham Jail, on today's date in 1963. From Cape Canaveral in Florida, Apollo 16, the fifth of 6 U.S. lunar landing missions, is successfully launched on its 238,000-mile journey to the moon. And 4 days later, astronauts John Young and Charles Duke descended to the lunar surface from the command module, which remained in orbit around the moon, with a third astronaut remaining on board. They remained on the moon for nearly 3 days and spent more than 20 hours exploring the surface of Earth's only natural satellite. The 2 astronauts used the lunar rover vehicle to collect more than 200 pounds of rock before returning to the command module. And 4 days later, the 3 astronauts returned to Earth, safely splashing down in the Pacific Ocean. But it was Apollo 16, the fifth of 6 U.S. lunar landings, that was launched on today's date in 1972 from Cape Canaveral in Florida. And in 2007, 32 people died after being gunned down on the campus of Virginia Tech by Song Hui Cho, a student at the college who later died by suicide. It happened on today's date in the Virginia Tech shooting that began early in the morning at 7:15 when this 23-year-old senior and English major at the Blacksburg-based Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University shot a female freshman and a male resident assistant in a campus dormitory before fleeing the building. Police were soon on the scene, unaware of the gunman's identity. They initially pursued the female victim's boyfriend as a suspect in what they believed to be an isolated domestic violence incident. However, he, armed with a 9mm handgun and a .22 caliber handgun and hundreds of rounds of ammunition, entered a classroom building, chained and locked several main doors, and went from room to room shooting people. Approximately 10 minutes after the rampage began, he died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The attack left 32 people dead and more than a dozen wounded. In all, 27 students and 5 faculty members died in this massacre. And 2 days later, NBC News received a package of material from him with a timestamp indicating he had mailed it from a Virginia post office between the first and second shooting attacks. Contained in the package were photos of a gun-wielding Cho, along with a rambling video diatribe in which he ranted about wealthy brats, among other topics. In the aftermath of the Virginia Tech shooting, authorities found no evidence that he, who was born in South Korea and moved to America with his family in 1992, had specifically targeted any of the victims. The public soon learned that as described by students, was a loner who rarely spoke to anyone, had a history of mental health problems. It was also revealed that angry, violent writings made for certain class assignments had raised concern among some of his professors and fellow students well before these events of the 16th of April. And in 2011, Virginia Tech was fined by the U.S. Department of Education for failing to issue a prompt campus-wide warning after he shot his first 2 victims. The Virginia Tech shooting, leaving 32 dead, happened on today's date in the year 2007. And in the last story that I have for today's date, it happened in 2018. The Pulitzer Prize Board awards the Pulitzer Prize for Music to rapper Kendrick Lamar for his 2017 album called Damn. It was the first time the award had gone to a musical work outside the genres of classical music as well as jazz. It was Kendrick Lamar that received this award on today's date in the year 2018, a watershed moment for the Pulitzers and Lamar, and a sign of the American cultural elite's recognition of hip-hop as a legitimate artistic medium. It was this award that was given to Kendrick Lamar in 2018. He was from California, and the Pulitzer Committee called this virtuosic song collection unified by its vernacular authenticity and rhythmic dynamism that offers effective vignettes capturing the complexity of modern African American life. Kendrick Lamar. His win was widely seen as a deserved recognition of his talent, as well as an overdue acknowledgement of hip-hop's contributions to American culture. And although some of the classical music community criticized the selection, former winners and nominees praised it. And he was, by some composers, called one of the greatest living American composers for sure when he received the Pulitzer Prize Board Awards for music. Rapper Kendrick Lamar on today's date in 2018. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my show for today on this lovely Tuesday. It is the 16th of April.